artists, young artists, I think they have lots of difficulties in pricing their own works, and starting with the gallery and having a wrong price to start with also is a very wrong strategy.
Also,
Strategy.
also the problem with relative pricing is the visibility people have in pricing is the pricing set by the galleries. I mean, I feel a lot of galleries, also small galleries, overprice work tremendously. So they might be able to sell one work or two works, but it's very important, it's very helpful if artists are engaged with people who actually have an economic interest in seeing them advance. You know, it's and what the galleries do, they overprice only and have this thing, you can only have one work. If people only have one work, people have no economic interest in seeing the advancement of the artist. Sometimes you need people, even in shares of companies. That's why they list institutional holders or top holders, because those people have more of an interest in seeing the company do well. They might not sell the stock, because if they sell the stock, it'll put downward pressure on the stock. So the ideas, many of the accepted ideas, you can have one work, you can have, sometimes you need deep holders of work to help support markets. And you see historically, there are people like the Namads who have deep holdings in Picasso and surrealism, or the McGrabys of deep holdings in Warhol, who actually help build markets and support markets because they have an economic identified interest in doing so. But with young artists, I think the key is to not be fixated as the value of the work. If you're able to make your work valuable, you have a lifelong of production ahead of you that can be monetized. The key at the beginning is figure out a way so you can actually get distribution and support intact globally. And I think there's a fetishization of value and price in young artists and galleries. I've seen, you know, I get called by artists all day long, sometimes artists with great galleries, and they're like, I was with this gallery, I really was desperate for money, I couldn't pay my studio rent. The gallerist took my work to an art fair. There was a collector who wanted to buy big work, but wanted a 30% discount. They refused to sell it. I had to close the studio because I was counting on that money, because they only wanted to do a 15% discount, and they had to close it. This is the problem. It's not like the gallery's paying the studio rent. The gallery's like, oh, you can't have a 30% discount, I'm going to defend the line. But like, they're defending the line, but the artist is on the line. You know, in my case with the artists I manage, the artist isn't on the line because they have money coming in every month or every few months. So I think there are a lot of decisions that are made inappropriately by galleries, and many of these artists call me and say, you know, I was with this gallery for 5 years. They really messed me up because they don't care, because they're holding the line. They can't sell something cheaper because their shortage of collectors might be upset. They always say, oh, well, won't my other collectors be upset if I sell it for less to them? The reason why the galleries have this position, because there is, as you say, a massive shortage of collectors. My philosophy is, if the collector likes it, they're going to buy it. If they think they can make money from it, they're going to buy it. All the moral rubbish that is spoken, all the blah, 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 I love it, is BS. If they want something, they're going to try buy it. If I have something that they want, no matter how much they hate my guts, and boy, many of them hate me, my phone rings, or someone who works for me for, oh, please, can I buy the work? All of them. It's bullshit. Oh, I hate Stefan. I hate Stefan's just a convenient excuse so you can pretend you're richer than you are. So you can say, oh, because sometimes you have to say, I don't like the work, I don't have money. With me, they can say, oh, Simchowitz involved. But when they want something you have, they're all there around the block. And when it's underpriced, there's 2 times as many people around the block.
Actually, in lectures, and actually I'm going to teach this week how to price art. One of the rules is for young artists is underprice and taste the waters, and show the artists with, you know, with a group of
exactly. If you sell a work on paper, one of the things you could do is, I'll sell you the work on paper for nothing, but you have to frame it. And when you frame it, you have to send me a picture, but you have to frame it in parameters. Framing a work on paper can cost $250, $500, $600. Someone buys 10 works on paper from you, that's $6,000. But a photograph, a beautiful photograph of a work on paper in a very nice frame, when you put that on your social media, Instagram, is going to elevate that and help you sell other work. So there's, you know, like art in its raw state, it has to be shipped, transported, photographed professionally. there are things that you can do that say, I'll sell this to you cheaply, but you have to meet these conditions. You need to, so there are lots of different ways to do it. But what artists don't understand is the costs of dealing with art, especially if you're in Turkey or in a geography that's are just enormous. The storage, the logistics, the documentation, it's complex. And I think young galleries, and I've been criticized for this as well, the problem with their economic model is that they should get a bigger cut of the pie, because they're the guys who do the hard working for the artist. And the minute the artist is successful, they're going to leave the gallery for a bigger gallery. So there's this narrative that galleries, take advantage of young artists. I would hazard to say, and oftentimes it's the young artists taking advantage of the galleries. There is no victim in this business. Everyone in some way, shape, or form is victimized by a business that functions with a total lack of scruples, a lack of loyalty, a lack of consistency. And I think the only way to sort of advance in a systematic way is to really understand these principles and not sort of put anyone on a particular pedestal. There's this tendency morally and ethically to place the artist on a pedestal because they are artists and they're creating God's work. They are creating God's work, and God's work is art. But God's work is also empathy and the people who look after you in hospital and the people who clean your streets so you don't smell shit when you walk out your front door. We're all doing God's work together. And I think culture has sort of, in the mythologies that have been created in the system, these mythologies of placing the artist on a pedestal are one of the mechanisms by which, monopoly capitalism can essentially reduce the supply falsely of art, create a fake shortage to eventually service a shortage of collectors who have figured out how to sort of play a game. And it's the responsibility of everyone in the system to really think through the system and figure out, what do I need to stay in the studio and improve as long as possible? How do I get capital in? And yeah.
And most of the small and mid-sized galleries also are in a shortage of capital, and they are in trouble right now, in particular due to this virus. And still, they are not willing to merge or
The small galleries have done very well in this environment. Very well. They've made a lot of money. They haven't had gone to art fairs. In LA, the small galleries here have made more money this year than they've ever made before, many of them. So the mid-sized galleries have different pressures. The large galleries, their volumes are down. But the small guys have actually had and you can speak to them, had very prosperous years. Artists have done very well in COVID. They've sold work directly. The $1 million ticket items, the big stuff, the big expensive stuff is under pressure. But artists have actually prospered during this period, because everyone's been moving online. There's been a lot of direct sales, so I see a very different environment economically. Artsy sales were, Everett, who's the CMO of Artsy sales are up 500% year on year. There's been an enormous amount of low cost business, which is fantastic.
What do you think about online auctions and selling art through auctions? I mean, as a dealer.
What do I think of them? I think it's all fine. I think everything provides exposure. Everything requires documentation. Different people view art in different ways. Every point is a point of contact. So respect all points of contact. Each point of contact is valid.
And recently, one of the auction houses in Turkey launched a new line of business, and I find it very interesting. It's a line from collector to collector, continuous selling from collector to collector under the umbrella of or under the guidance of this auction house. So as an art economist, I believe that will generate a lot of liquidity to younger artists. I mean, if some of the collectors want to flip some of the young artists. And
I think collector to collector business is much more complex than it sounds. Collectors are not really professional in selling art, shipping, picking up, delivery. It is a complex animal, dealing with claims, quality. I think it's something that definitely will emerge and will grow, and there's no problem with it, and there's a lot of activity in it, but it's usually between professionalized collectors who know each other. I mean, the auction house is obviously acting as an intermediary to provide some infrastructure to it and taking a percentage. So, you know, they're probably just taking a reduced percentage to increase the amount of inventory they can access to sell. So they're being creative. But yeah, I mean, collector to collector business is, you know, those collectors who are selling art are effectively dealers. So it's really a dealer to dealer business. And most collectors are dealers today. They're not collectors. So, you know, that's why there is such a shortage of collectors, because most of the collectors today are actually dealers themselves.
You know, the problem is this excess inventory. Some people, dealers and as well as collectors, think that they accumulate unnecessary art inventories, and you know what is the way to sell this art without depressing the prices. I mean, there must be some ways of doing that, and on a continuous basis, using these online selling mechanisms, online auctions.
Instead of thinking about how to sell the art, I think we need to think about how to increase the amount of people who can engage in art. Like you know, I think it's the wrong conversation. There are very few collectors in the world. We haven't even hit the tip of the iceberg. So although there's a current abundance of inventory, there is actually a total lack of collecting. And I think if we, instead of focusing on the abundance of inventory and the fear of auctions, maybe it's good that work sells cheaply at auction, because maybe people, and you can't buy that much work cheaply at auction. You can maybe get lucky once a year and pick something up. But maybe we need a lot more of that, so people can have the opportunity every now and again to be creative and pick that stuff up cheaply. It's not like you can buy 10 Joe Bradleys cheaply at auction. You can buy one here, one, two. You have to wait for the auction cycle. There's only a handful of auctions a year. But I think by providing people an opportunity to access work inexpensively, it's kind of like if you want to buy a Prada suit on Rodeo Drive, you're going to spend $4,000. If you drive out to the desert, you can buy one for $300. And I think the way to get around this is, let's focus on going out there, building new collectors, respecting them, not saying, oh, well, you're not good enough, you're not on the board of the museum. Oh, you're not good enough because you don't have an Andy Warhol in the collection. Oh, you're not good enough because you're from you're from the Midwest and you basically sell shoes. Oh, you're not good enough because you basically are a plumber. You know, let's go out and increase the size of collectors by making it easy for different people to access work. And I think what I'm very excited about in this project that we have, Creative Art Partners, is we are able to expand the collecting base dramatically. And oftentimes people say, oh, well, it's you know, these are not real people. These are not, like, this is a real estate development. You know, there's a constant undermining of the other in the art business. But I think instead of focusing on restricting supply and censoring collectors for selling at auction and blacklisting collectors, so I mean, so who do you end up selling to? Well, you end up selling to the richest people on the planet only. You end up selling to the people who are basically getting dismissed from all the boards of museums because of their nefarious investments in other activities. You know, i.e. the dismissal of Tom Gores from LACMA, or his resignation because of his investment in prison telecommunications business, where you spend 25 cents a minute making phone calls, or the resignation of Warren Kanders from you know, so the business is kind of eating itself. You know, it's like it's focused on these people. It's made them the sole collectors. You've got to focus the equation not on restriction and censoring people for messing up the price. It's the responsibility of the gallery system to increase the audience, and prices are flexible. The stock market works because You can go and buy a stock when it's depressed and no one else is buying it and it's cheap and no one believes in it, and it can double a year or 2 years later and you can make money. And you can buy a stock when it's at its peak and think it's going to go higher and it's half the next year. These market dynamics are what allow people to build positions in things. And I think this idea that art shouldn't be volatile publicly in price is also incorrect. There should be volatility, but the volatility is something that galleries want to avoid, because their shortage of collectors will be upset with them, because essentially their job of the fine art galleries is not to sell artwork. Well, it is to sell artwork, but it's to make sure that their collectors make money, that under the guise of and sanctity of their engagement institutionally and their privilege and their great collectors and their magazine articles that come out in the New York Times and Vanity Fair, that these are good, righteous people who care about culture and art. One of the primary functions of the gallery system is to maintain the illusion that when you buy art, you're going to make money. And you don't need to make money when you buy art. You maybe sometimes need to lose money because there are other things you're getting. So when you fly first class on British Airways from LA, that ticket costs you $18,000. You fly business, it costs you $8,000. You fly economy, it costs you $1,000. The experience is different for a couple of hours, but at the end of the day, the money's gone. So like one of the things that the business has done as well is art shouldn't be just for decorative purposes. Well, like flying shouldn't just be for comfort. You know, it's like, well, then buy the economy class ticket for $1,000. You know, and I think like they've sort of said, well, art has to be like this, like this, like this. But if it is decorating your house and you are getting decorative value from it, well, maybe you can assign a value to that, so that if you buy for 10,000, it's only worth 6, but you've lived with it for 10 years, maybe the value of that $4,000 of depreciation was sufficient for the experience of enjoying the work, just as it was in your decision to fly business instead of economy or first instead of coach.
You're touching the topics of one of my article, investing in art and psychic returns of art. So that's true. People buy art not only for financial reasons, but also for some psychic reasons, psychic returns of art. And in Turkey, we have found that for every $100 spent, $30 represent the psychic return of art. People generate lots of joy and happiness, and also lots of psychological benefits of owning art, reputation, etc. So you're right, and people sometimes lose in financial terms, but psychic returns are always positive. They are not vanish, as long as taste of the collectors stay the same. But coming back, when you make the comparison between stock market and art market, what I understand is you describe a perfect speculator. So are you an art speculator? If you love the volatility, if you love the opportunity in the market, can we call you that? Speculation is not. It's an optimal thing.
I mean, you're free to call me whatever you want. I've been called every name under the sun. Anyone is welcome to call anyone whatever the hell they want. Is it accurate if you want to define me as an art speculator? Sometimes, I suppose, but it's certainly not. I'd say I'm an investor. I'm a builder. I'm a thinker. But like a speculator is again, it's like something that people. It's negative. It has negative connotations. It's a denigration, and it completely undermines and undervalues the absolutely exhaustive and deep-rooted commitment and business that I've built in thinking about a system and trying to rebuild and invest in it. So the system will call me a speculator, undermine every aspect of what I do. And I think it's I don't believe in fair or unfair, because I'm a privileged guy, so there's no such thing as my life is fair, but I think it's just an inaccurate description. Speculation is part and parcel of of the language of human enterprise. And I think under the guise of non-speculation, many people are speculating. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't have a moral bias against it. I don't think it's an accurate portrayal of what I do, though. I take far too much risk to be a speculator.
I see.